I'm Mark Bolt. I'm a professor of biology here at UPike.
And how many years have you been the professor of biology?
Well, I've been here, this is my 13th year, but I was a professor in New Hampshire for 7 years before this.
Oh, okay. So clearly a long time in higher ed teaching and all quite your diversity. But as a full professor of biology, I wonder, Mark, as a kid, did you say, hey, I want to be a full professor of biology, or as a kid, what did you want to do?
Well, when I was a kid, I wanted to be, a fighter pilot or an astronaut or something like that. That was my goal in life. And then in 5th grade, I got glasses. And that was done. So, you make adjustments, and I've done a lot of things. A professor was not on my top of the list to start with.
So you get glasses, life changes, and was there anything then in like high school that you decided, hey, I really want to do this in high school?
Well, I liked science. That I've always wanted to know how things worked, but I didn't really see a job in science. I was small town Michigan, very rural area, and people just didn't do this kind of job. My dad and my grandfather before him were Buick dealers, so I worked, as a mechanic in high school and stuff, doing odd jobs, oil changes and that kind of stuff, and then I went in the Navy for 4 years. When I got out, I worked as a mechanic and selling Buicks for 10 years. I was a master automobile mechanic. Small town though, GM decided that they didn't need a Buick dealership in a town of 400 people, and so it was a closed point. My dad could not sell or transfer the dealership to anybody else. At that point, my wife, who was working in college administration, which she still does, said, you could come here for free. And so I went to school. Fell in love with doing biology and just kept going. At some point when I was in grad school, she said, you could stop going to school sometime.
Well, that's fascinating. I mean, the idea of the kind of track that you've been on or in your life here, and so having a variety of things that you've done or skills that you bring to the table. Is there a dream job out there for you?
Well, actually, this is my dream job. I didn't know whether I would really like teaching. Believe it or not, I have a phobia about being up in front of people and talking. But when I was in grad school, I started out TAing genetics, and in front of the classroom does not bother me. For some reason, it's different. I have something specific I want to convey to the students, and I loved the teaching. It was after I got in grad school, I said, okay, I don't want to concentrate on research, I want to teach. And I had such a good experience at Elma College where I was an undergraduate, and it's a small Presbyterian school, that it's like, I want to teach at a place like that.
And here you are now.
Here I am.
Place just like that. Wow, that's really cool. So did anything, you talked a little bit about the dealership drying up, but was there anything else in life that spurred you onto this path?
I enjoyed biology, but as the dealership was winding down, one of the things I did is I got trained as an EMT. So as an undergraduate, I worked in emergency medicine as a part-time job because I had a family, wife, and 2 kids. So I had to have income coming in, even though school was essentially no cost to me because my wife worked there. I had to pay lab fees and books, but that's a small part of going to college. The family still has to live.
So you were raising up some kids,
Mm-hmm.
married, working part-time or full-time as an EMT?
It was technically part-time, but I was working over 40 hours a week. So it was pretty much a full-time gig. But because I was one of 2 people that they had that were part-timers that could fill in when people were off for vacations or whatever.
Mm. And going to school full time.
Yeah.
Obviously not afraid of hard work or late hours, early mornings, and I know when we wrestle with, all these late hours and all that difficulty, do a lot of thinking, got to figure out what our life's about.
Mm-hmm.
And today here you are having, a good amount of time in your career now, this career. So if someone to ask you, Dr. Mark Bolt, what is your call in life? What is your purpose? And could you put that in a sentence? How would you answer that?
My purpose is to get my students to where they want to be in their lives. I'm just one person helping them along that pathway, and if I can contribute a little bit to what they want to do, I figure that I've done a positive influence on the world.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like teaching. I like the interaction with students, not just in the classroom, but the conversations out in the hallway, all that kind of stuff. That's just, I don't know, the kid's perspective kind of keeps me thinking on a younger basis, I think.
So this may be a mute question or a mute point, but do you feel like your current job, what you're doing right now, aligns with that greater call?
I think so. So, I think, maybe I'm wrong, but I think my love of teaching comes across in the classroom. I think the students know I care about them. So, because I really do. I refer to them as my kids. Because in a lot of ways, I feel like one of their parents.
And what's it like to have this big influence now on people who are doctors and all kinds of medical people or science people after all of these years? What's it like to see that tree extend all throughout the community now from you?
It kind of gives me a sense of a job well done in a way. It's like I made a difference, and to me, if you can go through life and say I made a difference in somebody's life, that's a good thing. At least a positive. I don't want to make a negative difference.
Yeah, positive. So you have been influential on people over, whether it's as a mechanic or as an EMT, literally as an EMT, probably saving lives, and now as a mentor, academic guide, and a professor. But who for you? Who has been most influential for you on your journey?
Oh, there's been a lot of influential people. My advisor when I was an undergraduate, Dr. Whittle, was an interesting character, and he encouraged me a lot. He made sure I participated in research when I was an undergraduate and did those kinds of things. But a lot of the guys, a lot of the instructors at Alma were not just him as my advisor, but some of the other ones were big influences on me too. I remember walking down the hall and a guy who taught there, Dr. Bowker, said, "I've been looking all over for you." What? He goes, we have 2 researchers from Texas A&M are here to do a seminar tonight. He said, "I want to make sure you were there because I thought you'd find it interesting." It's like, you were looking for me for that. So, just those little things where people, have an interest in you and say, you should show up for this. So, I try to pass that on to my students, be that influence to say, check this out.
So if someone were watching this and they said, you know what, I want to be a professor of biology. This is what I want to do with my life. What did you do to put yourself in that position for that career or that job?
Other than completing the undergraduate and applying for grad school, that's really what you need to do. What people don't understand is going to grad school for biology is different than going to medical school. It's not a professional school. It doesn't cost anything to go. They actually pay you. I tell students that and they're going, "What?" I says, "Yeah, the average now is about $25,000 a year stipend plus your tuition's free." So if you want to do this, it's a very reasonable kind of thing to do. The job prospects, on the other hand, depending on what you're into, are not that good. Like, people don't value higher education as a career, I don't think. And, well, education as a career they don't value, which is kind of a shame. I think our teachers should be one of the most valued members of society because they're shaping the youth. So, I think that's a sad commentary on our society. I was coming back from New Hampshire to Ohio because I moved to New Hampshire when my son was a senior in high school. So my wife stayed in Ohio for a year so he could graduate, and I was going back and had a guy in the plane next to me who was a contractor in Boston. He was talking about what he did, and he asked me what I did, and I told him. And he asked me what I made. He says, "If you don't mind me asking, what's a professor make?" And I told him. He goes, that's a crying shame. He says, "I have a high school education, and I've been making 6 figures for, the last 20 years. He says, "I can't believe with the education you have, that's all you make." So, for the most of the American society, they don't understand. I mean, you call this a calling, but in a lot of ways it's a sacrifice to do something like this. Lots of my students make way more money than I do, but I think I enjoy my job more.
So, how did you discern or figure out that was for you? Because, I mean, obviously, you had been a mechanic, an EMT, you'd gone to school, you have professors saying, "Hey, you'd be really interested in this." So there were probably other options for you. How did you figure out that teaching was your thing?
Like I said, it was really getting in front of the classroom for the first time in grad school and actually teaching. It's like, I really enjoy this. Having kids ask questions and being able to answer and, pick on students and tease them and have a good time. So,
the last question here, obviously you've had lots of conversations with students. I mean, in biology, particularly here, we have so many students who come in as bio majors and hope to be doctors or something like that. But maybe let's say you have a student who decides that I don't actually know what I'm supposed to do with my life. What advice would you have for that type of student?
I have students do that quite often, and sometimes it's a struggle. Should I do this? Should I do that? You can't really answer that question for them. We tell them to, job shadow if they think they want to be a physician or an optometrist, get a feel for what the job is like. But I had a student a few years ago. I said, just make the decision for me. Tell me what I should do. And I said, but you see, the problem with that is I've made that decision. This is what I want to do. And if you're going to tell me to make the decision for you, I'm going to make the same decision I made for me. And that's may not or probably not right for you. You've got to really, I feel, like what you're doing. And for some people that's not true. Some people just want to make a lot of money so that they can do the things they like in their off time. Not so much for me. I don't think I could work at a job that I don't like. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's me.